Richard, do we need to discuss any music? Sorry, Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Let's do Machthaufen.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Let's stand in the sanctuary. Welcome, Shabbat Shalom. Welcome to all of us here inside the synagogue sanctuary and to all of us at home, transforming our living rooms, our kitchens, wherever you are streaming in to be part of our community at prayer. We're using service number 4 in Siddur Lev Chadash, page 122. I invite you to sit down for those here with us in the synagogue. Delighted to be sharing the service this morning with Richard Green as well as our fab musicians. Eternal God, we come before you surrounded by members of our community. With them we share our happiness and it becomes greater, our troubles and they become smaller. May we never be too mean to give nor too proud to receive, for in giving and receiving we discover you and begin to understand the meaning of life. Let us not separate ourselves from the true strength of our community, the experience and wisdom of old people, the hopes of the young and the examples of care and courage which sustain us. Give us an open mind and a generous heart to welcome those who need us and to admit your presence into our daily life. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ozeh Yisrael bikfora. We should revere God in all that we do, privately as well as publicly, acknowledge the truth and speak it in our hearts. Ribon kol ha'olamim, lo al zitkotenu anachnu mapilim, tachanunenu lefanecha, ki al rachamecha harabim. Sovereign of all worlds, we lay our supplications before you, relying not on our merit, but on your abundant mercy. For what are we? What is our life? And what our piety? What our goodness and what our strength? What can we say in your presence, eternal God? Are not the mightiest of us as nothing before you, the famous as though they'd never lived, the learned as if they had no knowledge, the wise as if without understanding? For most of what we do is futile, and our life on earth is but a span. Our superiority over other animals amounts to little, for all is vanity. Nevertheless, we are your people, children of your covenant, and called to your service. Therefore it is right that we should thank and praise you, to proclaim your holiness, and daily say before you,
Ashreinu, Ashreinu, Mato, Mato, Mato Chelkeinu. Ashreinu, Ashreinu, Mato, Mato, Mato Chelkeinu. Manayim, Manayim, Manayim Goraleinu. Manayim, Manayim, Manayim Goraleinu. Manayim, Manayim, Manayim Goraleinu. Manayim, Manayim, Manayim Goraleinu. Umayava, 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 Yerushalayinu, Ashreinu. Umayava, 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 Yerushalayinu, Ashreinu.
We're on the middle of page 124. The only restrictions that we have being in the synagogue together is to resist singing along with Dean, as we just saw now, the silence where we would have responded to him, and just to keep our distance from each other to be safe. But otherwise, we are hoping week in, week out, we feel more and more like we're a congregation as before. So we're on page 124, at the foot of the page. Baruch she'amah v'haya ha'olam baruch hu. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, hamchulal b'fi amo meshubach umfa'al b'shon chasidav ba'avadav, b'shvachot u'vizmarot, nagadelcha v'namlichecha, malkeinu yachid chei ha'olamim. Baruch atah Adonai melech mechulal b'tishbachot. Middle of the page of 125. Praise be the Eternal One forever. Baruch Adonai leolam, amen ve'amen. Baruch Adonai Elohim, Elohei Yisrael, oseh niflaot levado, uvaruch shem kvodo leolam v'yamaleh chovodo et kol haaretz. Amen va'amen.
Nishmat kol chai, tevarech et shimcha.
The theme of this service is one of praise, of that ever-renewing sense of offering gratitude no matter what is happening in our lives. So the middle of page 126. Yet though our mouths should overflow with song as the sea, our tongues with exultation as the roaring waves, and our lips with praise as heaven's wide expanse, and though our eyes shine as the sun and moon, our arms spread forth like the wings of eagles, and our feet speed swiftly as hinds, still we could not fully thank you, eternal God, for your infinite kindness to our ancestors and to us. Therefore the limbs you formed in us, the spirit you've breathed into us, the tongue you have set in our mouths, all shall unite to thank and praise, extol you and exalt you, and the sovereign God. Every mouth shall thank you, every tongue bear witness to you, every knee shall bend to you, every body bow down to you, every heart shall revere you, and every fibre of our being shall sing your praise. For so it's written, all my bones shall say, who is like you, Eternal One? Therefore we extol you and proclaim your glory, praise your holy name, as it is said, Barachi nafshi et Adonai v'chol kravai et Shem Kodsho. So as a surprise this morning, instead of Psalm 93, our musicians have prepared the Hebrew song, Israeli song, Ani va'ata, you and I, in the spirit of this week's parasha, Korach, which is all about when dissent and rebellion shatters any hope of cooperation and coalescing, that we thought this would be a beautiful song to offer, even as we watch in these last few hours the forming of a new Israeli parliament made up of extraordinary spectrum of coming together, of cooperation. I've now lost the words. What's the word? A government that is... Coalition, thank you. So a coalition, and it gives us an opportunity to think great things happen when people are able to sit, work, talk alongside people that they disagree with. So Ani va'ata, sit back and enjoy. You and I can change the world. So with that, let's prepare to go towards the Baruch Hu, our public call to prayer. We've welcomed each other and ourselves. We're on page 128. Let's stand for the Yishtabach, going into the Baruch Hu.
Yishtabach Shimcha La'ad Malkeinu Ha'el HaMelech HaGadol VaHaKadosh B'Shamayim U'Va'aretz Ki lecha na'eh Adonai Eloheinu Ve'Elohei Avotenu Shir u'shvacha Halel ve'zimra Brachot v'hodaot me'ata ve'ad olam. Baruch atah Adonai הבוחר בשירי זמרה.
Page.
ברוך הוא את אדוני המבורך. ברוך אדוני המבורך לעולם ועד.
Please be seated wherever you are. We are at the top of page 136 together. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, yotzer or uvorei choshech, oseh shalom uvorei et hakol. In your mercy you give light to the earth and all who live on it, and in your goodness you renew creation continually day by day. How manifold are your works, O God! With wisdom you have made them all. The world is full of your creations. Your handiwork proclaims your praise. The radiant stars bear witness to your glory. Baruch atah Adonai, Yotzer HaMa'orot. This next prayer is one that I have come to like more and more over the course of my life. I think a lot of people think of it as a bit of a throwaway. It's just something that we say as we're heading towards the Shema, but the more I read it, the more I realize it is a reminder that we are in a covenant with God as a people, that we are in a contract, that we have a deal with God. And this is a reminder to God that we have a deal with God, and God has a deal with us as well. So I have grown to like it more and more the more I hear it like this. Great is your love for us, eternal God, and abundant your compassion. Our ancestors trusted in you, and you taught them the laws of life. So be gracious to us and teach us. Incline our hearts to hear your words, to know and understand, to learn and teach, and with love to uphold the truths of your Torah. Enlighten us with your teaching, make us faithful to your commandments, and wholehearted in the love and awe of your name. For in love you summon us to serve you and proclaim your unity. Baruch atah Adonai, habocher ba'amo Yisrael ba'ahava. Please rise.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad, Baruch Shem, Kavod Malchuto, Leolam
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Eloheinu v'chol levavcha v'chol nafshecha v'chol meodecha. V'hayu hadvarim ha'ela asher anochi mitzavcha hayom al levavecha. V'shinantan levanecha v'dibarta bam v'shifteka b'beitecha uv'lechteka v'derech uv'shachbacha uv'komecha. Ukshartam le'ot al yadecha v'hayu letotafot bein einecha uchtavtam al mizuzot b'beitecha uvisharecha.
למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
True and good and beautiful, sound, established, and enduring are these words now and forever. True it is, Eternal One, that you are our sovereign God and Redeemer, as you were the God and Redeemer of our ancestors. You are our Maker, the rock of our salvation. We have known you always as our helper and our liberator. There is no God but you. Truly you are first, and you are last. We have no redeemer but you. You redeemed us from Egypt and freed us from the house of bondage. Then with great joy, Moses, Miriam, and all Israel together sang to you this song. שירה חדשה שיבחו גואלים לשמך על שפת הים. יחד כולם הודו והמלכו ואמרו
אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. צבא ישראל קומה בעזרת ישראל. גואלנו אדוני צבאות שמו. צבאות שמו, קדוש ישראל, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
Please rise for the Amidah at the top of page 140. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, Elohei Abraham, Elohei Yitzchak ve'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel ve'Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor ve'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim ve'Koneh HaKol, ve'Zocher Chasdei Avot ve'imaot u'mevi ge'ula livnei v'neihem, Lema'an Shemo be'ahava, Melech Ozer u'Mashiach u'Magen, Baruch atah Adonai, Magen Avraham ve'Ezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor le'olam Adonai, Mechaye mitim atah Rav lehoshia, Mashiv haruach u'Morid hageshem, Mazriach hashemesh u'Morid hatal. V'ne'eman l'chachayot metim, Baruch atah Adonai, Mechaye hametim. Nikadesh et shimcha be'olam, keshem shimakdeshim oto bishmei marom, kakatuv al yad neviecha.
Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melech ol haaretz kavodo.
Kavodo malei olam.
Baruch kavod Adonai mimakomo.
Mimkomcha malkenu tofia v'timloch aleinu כי מחכים אנחנו לך.
Loch Adonai leolam, Elohai Zion, Vador, Hallelujah. Ledovador, nagid God lecha, ulenitzach nitzachim, ulenitzach nitzachim, kedushatcha nakdish. Ledovador, nagid God lecha, ulenitzach nitzachim, ulenitzach nitzachim, kedushatcha nakdish. V'shivcha Eloheinu, mipinu lo yamush leolam va'ed, ki el melech gadol, HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Ledovador, nagid God lecha, ulenitzach nitzachim, kedushatcha nakdish.
Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'el, HaKadosh. And let's sit down. You inspired our ancestors to hallow this day for your service. When upon its coming we pause to contemplate our life, we learn anew that we do not live by bread alone, but also by the spiritual nourishment we receive when we open ourselves to your influence. We thank you for the Sabbath day and for the opportunity it offers to enhance the quality of our lives. We thank you for its joy and for its peace. May our worship help us to take into our hearts its message of holiness and consecrate all our days by devotion to what is true, beautiful, and good.
Yismachu b'malchutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Yismachu b'malchutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Makadoshi shvi Shabbat, kulam yisbou v'yitangu mituvek HaShabbat. Yismachu b'malchutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Yismachu b'malchutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. V'hashvi'i ratzita bo v'kidashto Shabbat. Emdat yamim, oto karata Shabbat. Yismachu b'malchutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Yismachu b'malchutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Zecher l'maseh b'reshit Shabbat. Zecher l'maseh b'reshit Shabbat. Yismachu b'malchutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei, oneg Shabbat. Yismachu b'malchutecha, shomrei, 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 Shabbat v'korei.
hardest one, of course, not to sing along with. Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu. May our rest on this day be pleasing in your sight. Sanctify us by your commandments, and make us loyal to your teaching. Satisfy us with your goodness, gladden us with your salvation, and purify our hearts to serve you in truth. In your gracious love, Eternal One, let the holiness of the Sabbath enter our hearts, and may all Israel who hallow your name be exalted by its peace. Baruch atah Adonai, Mekadesh HaShabbat. Eternal God, be gracious to your people Israel, and in your love accept their prayers. May our worship now and always be acceptable in your sight. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levadecha b'yirah na'avod. Modim anachnu lach, she'ata hu Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu leolam va'ed. Tzur chayenu, magen yishenu, ata hu ledor vador. Nodeh lecha u'nisaper tehilatecha, al chayenu hamisarim beyadecha, ve'al nishmotecha ve'hapikudot lach, ve'al nisecha shebechol yom imanu, ve'al niflotecha ve'tovotecha shebechol et erev v'voker ve'tzohorayim. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha, u'lecha na'eh lehodot.
Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chena chesed verachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, barcheinu avinu kulanu techad, ve'or panecha, ki ve'or panecha natat lanu, Adonai Eloheinu. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chema chesed verachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, Torat chayim, ve'ahavat chesed, u'tzedakah u'bracha ve'rachamim ve'chayim ve'shalom. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chema chesed ve'rachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha, v'tov ve'enecha, levarech et amcha Yisrael, b'chol et u'v'chol shah, bishlomecha. Sim shalom, tova uvracha, chena chesed verachamim aleinu, ve'al kol Yisrael, amecha.
Baruch atah Adonai, oseh hashalom. In the before times, as my son calls it, before Rona, I used to make a point here of talking about what a noisy world we live in and how important it is to have moments of silence. The past 18 months have been very different, of course. I think many of us have been living with more silence than we've ever had before. Some of us alone, some of us always with the same people day in, day out. And as we start to move out of that, we hope possibly as soon as 2 weeks from now into a normal life, or perhaps 4 weeks after that. But as we begin to move out of this very strange period, I think it's useful to remember those times that we have to ourselves for whatever it is that we need to hear in our hearts and in our minds. So a moment for that.
עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל בני אדם. הוא עושה שלום במרומה, הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל בני אדם. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל. יעשה שלום, יעשה שלום, שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל.
We are on page 481 for Kriyat HaTorah, the reading of the Torah, the heart of every Shabbat morning service. Please join us at the top of page 481.
אין כמוך לאלוהים אדוני, ואין כמעשיך, מלכותך מלכות כל עולמים, וממשלתך בכל דור ודור. אדוני מלך, אדוני מלך, אדוני ימלוך לעולם ועד. אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו בשלום.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
אחד אלוהינו, גדול אדוננו, קדוש שמו.
Gadlu Ladonai Iti Unaromama Shemo Yachdav.
לך אדוני הגדולה והגבורה והתפארת והנצח וההוד. כל בשמיים ובארץ, לך אדוני הממלכה והמתנשא לכל לראש.
Let's sit down. I'm just waiting for those at home to be able to see the Torah on the screen, the piece that we're reading. And for those in the sanctuary, if you'd like to use or nip out now to get yourself a chumash, please feel free to do so. We are in the book of Numbers, Parshat Korach, the book of Numbers, chapter 16, I think we are, 16, let me remember, yes, 16, verses 1 to 19. So you are welcome to help yourself to a chumash. So this is the portion of Korach who is known as the ultimate rebeller, dissenter in the Jewish people. And the jury's out. You can decide whether you agree with that description of him and how he and his followers rebel and criticize Moses. I'm going to say a little bit more about that and about how in our tradition this famous argument is conceived by rabbinic commentators, although not that much is written about this because it's seen as so heinous, as being the ultimate argument that was not for any purpose of coalescing, working together, supporting, working within the system, but actually the drama and the speech of Moses, who says far more than we normally hear in terms of being angry and upset and feeling that he has been undermined himself. So look out for the language around, and I'm going to say something about it a little later and link it to a portion just in 3 weeks' time, Pinchas, where we hear about the daughters of Zelophehad. But look at the language, listen as I translate about the verbs that are used for how Korach and his men, and we assume they're men to be fighting men, the language they use in how they stand and assemble together in front of Moses. And look at how peeved Moses becomes and where Aaron is in all of this. We've seen many challenges before. Just a couple of weeks ago, we saw a sibling challenge when Moses is challenged by Aaron and Miriam. We see him, that same response. We're going to see Moses again falling on his face. We see this modest man, but this modest man who in this instance is riled. So we're going to just do a little bit of moving backwards and forwards while I let Richard call up Louise. So I will back up for a moment.
Gives me great pleasure to call up Louise Gelman, Ta'amod, Yisraela, Bat David V'chana, Likrat HaTorah.
I'm going to go into this corner and let Louise do this corner.
Baruch et Adonai HaMavorach.
Baruch Adonai HaMavorach le'olam va'ed.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. Asher b'cha banu mikol ha'amin. V'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Adonai notein ha'Torah.
Amen. I'm reminded of this extraordinary moment in Tanakh, in the book of writings, where we see Ezra and Nehemiah bring all those who'd been in exile in Babylon after the fall of the first temple back to, and they stand at the Watergate, this extraordinary moment that's likened to actually the giving of the Ten Commandments, where Ezra, and I'm going to talk about this all year actually, Ezra does this thing that we've never seen before. He reads in Hebrew, everyone cries because they don't understand the Hebrew. He translates it, and then we have this extraordinary line that says, and he makes meaning from it. So I am reminded of that and why we in our liberal synagogues are so attached to understanding the words of Torah, of not just hearing the beautiful melodies, of which there are many, but actually seeing how the words of Torah speak to us. So, and I think in this dramatic scene, even more so. So we are all literally standing at the Watergate right now, but not with Ezra. Vayikach Korach ben Yitzhar, ben Kahat, ben Levi, v'Tatan, v'Aviram, b'nei Eliav, v'on, ben Pelet, b'nei Reuven. V'yakumu לפני משה, ואנשים מבני ישראל, 50 ו200 נשיאי עדה קוראי מועד אנשי שם, ויקהלו על משה ועל אהרון, ויאמרו עליהם רב לכם, כי כל העדה כולם קדושים, ובתוכם אדוני, ומדוע תתנסו על קהל אדוני, וישמע משה ויפול על פניו, וידבר אל קורח ואל כל עדתו לאמור, בוקר ויודע אדוני את אשר לו, ואת הקדוש והקריב אליו, ואת אשר יבחר בו. יקריב אליו זאת עשו קחו לכם מחטות קורח וכל עדתו, ותנו בהם אש, ושימו עליהן קטורת לפני אדוני מחר. והיה האיש אשר יבחר אדוני הוא הקדוש, רב לכם בני לוי. ויאמר משה אל קורח, שמעו נא בני לוי, המעט מכם כי הבדיל אלוהי ישראל אתכם מעדת ישראל להקריב אתכם אליו, לעבוד את עבודת משכן אדוני ולעמוד לפני העדה לשרתם, ויקרב אותך ואת כל אחיך בני לוי איתך, ובקדשם גם כהונה, לכן אתה וכל עדתך הנועדים על אדוני ואהרון, מה הוא? כי תלינו אליו. וישלח משה לקרוא לדתן ולאבירם בני אליאב, ויאמרו לא נעלה. המעט כי הליטנו מארץ בת חלב ודבש, להמיתנו במדבר, כי תשתרע עלינו גם השתרע. אף לא על ארץ בת חלב ודבש, הביתנו ותיתן לנו נחלת שדה וכרם, העיני האנשים ההם תנקר לא נעלה. ויזכר למשה מאוד, ויאמר אל אדוני, אל תפן אל מנחתם, לא חמור אחד מהם נשאתי, ולא הראיתי את אחד מהם. ויאמר משה אל קורח, אתה וכל עדך היו לפני אדוני, אתה והם ואהרון מחר. וקחו איש מחתותו ונחתם עליהם קטורת, והקרבתם לפני אדוני איש מחתותו, 50 ו200 מחתות, ואתה ואהרון איש מחתותו, ויקח איש מחתותו, מחתותו is the fire pan they're being told to bring for a test, ויתנו עליהם אש וישימו עליהם קטורת ויעמדו פתח אוהל מועד, ומשה ואהרון ויקהל עליהם קורח את כל העדה אל פתח אוהל מועד, וירא כבוד אדוני אל כל העדה. Just before I translate, while Franklin's taking a break, I think we should open the door. Thanks, Richard. I think we need more ventilation in here, but I'm aware behind Franklin it's hard. But while he's not here, let's bring some air in. We can open these doors. It's just when Ivriya are walking around, but maybe we'll just get some cross air between us. So here is the drama unfolding. Korach took Korach, who's the son of Yitzhar, the grandson of Kahat, the ancestors or the people of the tribe of Levi, and he took with him Datan and Aviram, who were the sons of Eliab, and On, who was the son of Pelet, all of them part of the tribe of Reuben, which I notice with interest, and they rose up. They gathered and rose up in front of Moses and all the people that were part of the children of Israel. And they were 250 of them, the princes of the assembly, the ones who were known by name, so the famous people amongst them. And they gathered against Moses and against Aaron. And they said to the two of them, Rav Lechem, you have taken too much upon yourself. Why? Because the whole community is holy and God dwells amongst them. Why therefore do you stand and lord it over the community of God? Moses hears these words, and what does he do? He falls on his face. In an act of modesty or anger, we're not quite sure. And Moses says to Korach and to all his men, saying, in the morning God will make known who God has chosen and who is holy, and who God chooses to draw near to God's self. And whoever that person is who's chosen will be allowed to be called near to God. This is what you must do. You must take for yourself your fire pans and Korach and fire pans, all of you, Korach and all Korach's men, and you should put in them fire, and you should put on the top of them incense ready to burn before God tomorrow morning. And it shall be that the man that God chooses will be holy. You, actually, and Moses repeats the words, honestly, Shakespeare could have done no better. You have taken too much upon yourselves, you sons of Levites, the Levite tribe. And Moses says to Korach Listen to me, you sons of Levites. Isn't it enough that God, the God of Israel, has separated you from the whole congregation in order to bring you near so that you can do God's work and do the work and the worship of the Mishkan, and to stand before the holy assembly and to minister to the people? And Moses called on them and said to come close, all of you Levites and your brothers, that all of you are coming close and are daring to ask also for the priesthood. So kahuna was different from the role of the more assistant priests, the Levites, and here we're marking them. Therefore, you and all your people are standing against God. But Aaron, what's Aaron ever done to you that you should be complaining against him? And Moses sent to call for Datan and Aviram, the sons of Eliav, and they responded to Moses by saying, we're not coming. So this really is about as dramatic as you can imagine. And what is their answer? Is it enough that you should have taken us out? And listen to the description. They're not talking about Israel here. They are talking about Egypt. Isn't it enough that you've taken us out of the land flowing with milk and honey and brought us into the desert to die, that you should lord it over us and lord it over it? So that is repeated, lord it over us. Rather, you have brought us here to this land where this is not a land flowing with milk and honey. You have brought us here, and have you given us, this is the question, have you given us an inheritance of fields and vineyards? No, we can't see that. Rather, you are deceiving us. No, we will not come. We will not play ball with you. And Moses becomes furious. And Moses says to God, do not pay any attention to not one of their offerings. It's not often that we see Moses really petitioning against his people. But do not pay any attention to any of their offerings. I have not taken one donkey from any of them. I have not harmed one of these men. And Moses said to Korah, you and the whole of your congregation has to agree to stand in front of God, you, all of you, and Aaron will be there tomorrow morning. And every person has to bring their fire pan and offer their fire pan before them with incense within it. And you shall draw near in front of God. And every man shall have their fire pan. Look how many times this fire pan and the offering that they're doing. So it's some kind of test. Every man should have their fire pan with them. 250 fire pans should be there. And you and Aaron and everyone holding their fire pan will be there. And every person will offer their fire pan and put within it fire, and on top of the fire, incense ready. And you shall stand at the door of the tent of meeting. And it will be also Moses and Aaron ready, standing there, and all the congregation in front of you. And Korah and all of your people will be standing in front of the tent of meeting. And suddenly it became clear that the glory, the image of God, was there in front of the whole congregation.
A blessing and not a fire pan. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet, v'chayei olam notar b'tocheinu. Baruch atah Adonai, noten haTorah.
Amen. Yeshakach. A blessing to you, Louise, and all your family for having blessed this particular portion. I'm going to stand back now, and Richard, if you want.
Are you going to...
Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah, Baruch Shenatan Torah Torah, Le'amo Yisrael b'kedushato.
give us just a moment to sort out the Torah, but please be seated.
Richard, if I swap and just let you...
Yep, got it.
So delighted that Peter is here in the sanctuary with us to read Haftarah. Dean is nipping out now to lead. We have Ivria back in the building for the first time in a long while. So they're tefillah. The Haftarah this morning comes from the first book of Samuel and echoes, why is it echoing the story of Korach? Because Peter, by all means, used the other desk there, because of Samuel being cross with the people when they ask for a king. And they say it's not enough, his leadership and the leadership in the judges, they want their own king. And we get an echo of exactly the same phrase. Have I taken a donkey from them? Have I ever done anything to them? Samuel is very cynical about the desire to be like other nations and have a king. Samuel's led them beautifully, and now we're going to see the beginning of the monarchy for the Israelite clans, and Saul obviously being the first king. But this is the conversation that Samuel has.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher bacha b'nviim tovim v'ratzav v'divreihem hanemarim b'emet. Baruch atah Adonai habocher b'Torah u'v'Moshe avdo u'v'Yisrael amo u'v'nviei hamet v'atzedek. Samuel said to the people, "Let us all go up to Gilgal, and there renew the kingship." So all the people went to Gilgal, and there at Gilgal, before the Eternal, they crowned Saul king. They offered up peace offerings to God, and along with Saul, they all held a great celebration. Then Samuel said to all Israel, "I have listened to your pleas, done everything you asked me of me, and set a king over you. From now on, the king will be your leader. As for me, I am old and grey. I know how he felt. My grown-up sons are among you, and I've been your leader since my youth. Here I am. Testify against me in the presence of the Eternal, in the presence of God's anointed king. Have I taken anyone's ox or anyone's donkey? Have I maltreated or oppressed anyone? Have I taken a bribe to turn a blind eye to anyone? Tell me, and I will return it." They answered, "You have not maltreated or oppressed us. You have taken nothing from anyone." He said to them, "Then the Eternal is witness, and God's anointed king is witness this day that you have found nothing sticking in my hand." They answered, "Witness." And Samuel said to the people, "The Eternal is witness, the one who chose Moses and Aaron and who brought your ancestors out of Egypt. Now stand here in the presence of the Eternal. I will put the case to you concerning all the victorious acts the Eternal has done for you and your ancestors. When Jacob and his family came to Egypt, the Egyptians oppressed them, and your ancestors cried out for help to the Eternal, who sent Moses and Aaron, who brought them out of Egypt and settled them in this place. But they forgot the Eternal their God, who gave them into the hand of Sisera, Hazor's commanding general, into the hand of the Philistines, into the hand of the king of Moab, and they had to fight them. They cried out to the Eternal, saying, 'We did wrong by turning away from the Eternal and serving the Baals and the Astartes. Save us now from our enemies, and we will serve you.' Then the Eternal sent Jerubbaal and Bedan and Jephthah and Samuel and saved you from the enemies around you, and you have lived in safety. But when you saw Nachash, king of the Ammonites, marching against you, you said to me, 'No, we must have a king to rule us, though the Eternal your God is your true king.' Now then, there is the king you chose, whom you requested. Now the Eternal has given you a king. If you revere, serve, and listen to God, do not rebel against the word of the Eternal, then you and your king will be followers of the Eternal your God, and all will be well. But if you do not listen to the voice of the Eternal, but rebel against the word of the Eternal, then the hand of the Eternal will be against you and against your kings. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Tzur kol amin sadiq b'chol hadarov ha'el ha'ne'aman ha'amev yoseh hamdabei u'makayim shebechol Devarov emet v'tzedek al haTorah v'al havodah v'al hanviim v'al yom haShabbat hazeh shenata'ata lanu Adonai Eloheinu likdushav lenucha lechavod ultefaret al hakol Adonai Eloheinu anachnu modim lach umavarachim otach yitbarach shimcha b'fi kol chai tamid li'alam va'ed Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
Ishakar, beautiful teacher. You can really imagine Samuel today and his frustration. So let's stand for the community prayer. Barry will hop on up to Dean's side of the bima.
Right, community blessing. Eternal God, we ask your blessing on our Queen Elizabeth and all the royal family, as well as those who govern our country. Guide them and all who govern our country with a spirit of wisdom and compassion, so that they care for the citizen and the stranger and bring benefit to all the inhabitants of our country and the world. Bless all our brothers and sisters of the house of Israel. Bless our congregation and all its members. Be with those who seek your presence and all those who are in need of healing, spiritual or physical. Let them know that you are near to comfort and sustain them. May peace exist in the state of Israel soon and in our time. May you, eternal God, grant blessing to her, establish as an age-old dream and home to the oppressed. May its leaders and citizens be inspired with the faithfulness to the aims of all its founders, and may the country be imbued with the prophetic ideals of liberty and justice, always. May this Shabbos renew our energy to build and sustain a better world and to deepen our gratitude of so much that surrounds us. And let us say, Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Barry. Yahallelu et Shem Adonai ki niskav shemo levado. Hodu al eretz v'shamayim v'yarem kerem v'amo tehila l'kol hasidav lifnei Yisrael ankarovo. Hallelujah, hallelujah. God's teaching is perfect, reviving the soul. God's word is unfailing, making wise the simple. God's precepts are right, delighting the mind. God's commandments are clear, enlightening the eyes. God's doctrine is pure, enduring forever. God's guidance is true and altogether just. Behold, a good doctrine has been given you, do not forsake it. It is a tree of life to those who hold it fast, and all who cling to it find happiness. Its ways are ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Ashivenu Adonai Ha'elecha Ve'yashuva Hadesh Yameinu Kekedem Hadesh Yameinu Please be seated.
This choreography on the Bima adds a certain piquancy, doesn't it, to our Shabbat morning services. So I am sure that you have all noticed a mezuzah on a doorpost in our synagogue, in homes you visit, in your own homes. I always look at them when I walk into someone's house. And it turns out that the mezuzah is the ultimate symbol of disagreement. The first teacher who commented on that was Rashi. Rashi, French rabbi who also happened to have vineyards and produce a very good wine, so we hear. But Rashi said you should hang a mezuzah vertically. It should be straight up. But if I ask you all, have you ever seen a straight up mezuzah? You'll say no. His grandson, Rabbeinu Tam, said, no, it definitely shouldn't be vertical. It should be horizontal. But I can guarantee you have never seen a horizontal mezuzah either. And 150 years later, Jacob ben Asher, known as the Tor, split the difference. He said, you have in Rashi and in Rabbeinu Tam vertical and horizontal. And Jacob ben Asher said, no, no, no. Put it at an angle so that you honor both of them. It is the perfect ritual reminder that we often, in Jewish life as well as all other parts of our existence, have to look for the compromise position. I think about compromise a great deal. My job demands an effective handling of compromise, as some of your jobs might also. Strong opinions, sure, you need that in a rabbi, but politically adept and diplomatic too comes in handy. I also think about the question, when is it ever right to challenge a leader? Clearly, the message in this week's Torah portion is don't challenge a leader unless you've really got good reason to do so. At least don't challenge Moses. Moses may be modest, but his boss is fiercely protective of him, and those who challenge and rebel against him do not come out well. We didn't read the rest of the story, but it really doesn't end well for those who rebel and dissent. You have gone too far, the rebels accuse Moses. For all the community are holy, all of them, and Adonai is in their midst, literally living amongst them. Why then do you raise yourself above the congregation of God? Though God squashes Korah's rebellion and the earth swallows up the rebels, spoiler alert, his false accusations regarding the relationship between the individual and the community are not totally without merit for us thinking about community dynamics in the 21st century. It is true that every individual is holy, and God is found whenever we gather as a community, a congregation, whether here in our four walls or, as we have seen, even beyond them. In Pirkei Avot, the section of the Mishnah we love most to quote, the dispute of Korach and his congregation is held up as the paradigm of a machlochet shelo l'shem shamayim, an argument that is not for the sake of heaven. It's remembered as problematic, ego-driven, and Korach is painted as an attention-seeking failure. But not all of Jewish tradition sees Korach in this light. An amazing work by Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel about the Kotzker Rebbe, who was one of the great Hasidic masters who loved particularly Korach, the individual Korach in Torah. The Kotzker said that actually religious leaders sometimes find themselves being too passive, too always willing to compromise. We need backbone, said the Kotzker. And Korach, Kotzker said, whatever you think about him, he had backbone. He was willing to stand his ground. It didn't matter that he was challenging Moses and all the leaders of our people. He had backbone and he stuck to what he believed was the right path. An interesting reading of the story, and interesting for us today to think about what compromise means. Speaking to this same dynamic, the 20th century commentator Rabbi Joseph Soloveitchik asks, does the individual stand above the community which should serve its needs, or should the individual subordinate themselves to the community's needs? To answer this question, Soloveitchik uses this very story to say that Moses is often a paradigm, that actually the community, the whole community, is always as valuable as Moses himself is. So in this story, are we not called to see, was there something in Korach's critique that allows us to think that actually we are always holding the balance of the community and the individual in balance with each other, and that Moses and Korach play that out. How we hear each other's views and what we presume is the majority's perspective is the way we talk about being in a congregation, whether it be in a synagogue, in a society, in a parliamentary setting. Aren't we meant as Jews to challenge, to question, to pontificate against the leaders of the day? Isn't liberal Judaism actually a rejection in its early days of the older patriarchal Judaism, an offering of something new, even iconoclastic, however much decorum there was in the early days of the new Jewish offering of Mattock, Montague and Montefiore at the beginning of the 20th century? Isn't that what makes our parliament in this country so Jewish, if you'll pardon the description? A formal paid opposition to critique and heckle those in charge. Don't we teach our children to think for themselves whilst they hold that balance of respect for their elders and their leaders? There are a huge spectra of views here in our own camp, right here in our synagogue of FPS. Who holds the majority or the leadership as we watch perspective shifts and changes of views? Who is right? We can never say on any one day, but I do know that generally dissent is healthy, except when it seeks to undermine and destroy. And that is our question about this week's leader in our portion. There may be some interest in the link between this portion of Korach and next month's portion of Pinchas that speaks to my interest in challenge and dissent and how we go about bringing about change and challenge. The daughters of Zelophehad are described in the portion of Pinchas in the first weekend of July. And this portion here, Korach, they are possibly connected, especially as the daughters of Zelophehad are described that their father is not one of the people of Korach. There has to be a connection. Dr. Rachel Rosenthal, a JTS professor, suggests that it's completely spelled out. The two portions are meant to be read together. How do you bring about change? How do you challenge the existing status quo? How do you change the system that you are a part of? She calls us to notice the difference in language. Vayikahalu, they assembled, the people of Korach, against Moses. Vatikravna, when the daughters of Zelophehad asked Moses to consider female inheritance, the language that's used is they come close to talk to Moses. For me, as we watch our country, our movement of liberal Judaism, our own synagogue grapple with change, new perspectives, different views and attitudes from all of our members, I wonder, is there something to note when change and challenge happens, whether it is within the system or outside of it, whether it is an evolutionary response to challenge in the community so that laws and practice change over time slowly, or is it sometimes that we need that voice of dissent, rebellion, critique, as Korach had? The truth is, the daughters of Zelophehad got what they wanted. From that portion onwards, women in Torah were allowed to inherit wealth and name from their male relatives if there were no male ancestors that could carry on the name and the inheritance. Was there something about the way they worked within the system, about the way they asked for change, about the way they critiqued what was happening already, that means that their names are mentioned in a much more positive way than Korach? Korach is considered to be a fight of ego, a brusque and militaristic coup that alienated, undermined, even dismantled the community who were there. Now, I love dissent. I think of Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I respectfully dissent. I think bringing new challenges, ideas, and ways of thinking into our Judaism and our community is not just good, but the lifeblood of what it means to move and transform and see our Judaism thriving and growing. It is a sign of growth and development. But could it be that Korah teaches us something about the manner in which we do it? Could we be reminded every time we see a mezuzah that ultimately it is compromise that brings about the things that last? Shabbat Shalom, Amen, Ken Yehi Ratzon. May we think about that as we pass every home, every doorpost, and think about what it means in our own lives. We are now going to go straight to Aleinu. I'm going to allow Richard and Dean to lead us into Aleinu. While we're still standing, let's go to Kaddish together as a congregation. We think this week particularly of the death of Sami Sofisad, husband of Nelika, father of Elliot and Jessica. Zichrono Livracha, may his memory be for a blessing. Sami's funeral will take place tomorrow morning and Shiva tomorrow evening, and in person and a small, and obviously we're not allowed to allow others to come, but I know how much the family would welcome comfort and condolences from the rest of the congregation. We think also this week of the death of Katie Varga, good friend of A.C. Baker, part of our congregation. May their name be for a blessing. And we turn now to the yahrzeits that fall this week. Slavs Gladstein, father of Michael Pasilkin. Eva and Mark Morrison, parents of Dorothy Hill. Leo Rosenbaum, father of Jackie Fawcett. Ralph Siegel, father of Joyce Lucas. And Martha Taus, mother of Patricia Hinson. Zichronam Livracha. May all their memories be for a blessing. And may those who recall and remember their loved ones be comforted in their loss as the community gathers and says the words of Kaddish with you. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shamei rabba, bi'alma divrach hirute v'yamlich malchute, b'chayachon u'v'yomechon, u'v'chaye d'chol beit Yisrael, magalav isman kari v'imru amen. Yehi shmei rabba mevorach le'olam omer maya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'a v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yitahada v'yitale v'yitala l'shemed kudusha brichu leila min kol birchata v'shirata tushbachata v'nechemata da'amiram bi'ama v'imru amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shamaya v'hayem aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Ose shalom bimromav hu yaseh shalom aleinu v'yal kol Yisrael V'al kol b'nei Adam, v'imru. Amen. Let's sit down. I am presuming Tamara is here in our congregation at home.
Yes, I am. Yes, I am.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Over to you, Tamara.
Good morning, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you to everyone who led the service, participated in the service, all the volunteers who make our services possible. Particular thanks, Rebecca, to you for your very thought-provoking service. My head is buzzing with all the different applications and situations that it immediately feels relevant to. Thank you, Richard, for leading our prayers and for bringing a different perspective and inflection to them. Thank you to Louise, to Peter, and to Barry. I'm getting a real vicarious thrill from seeing you all in the building. It's so wonderful to see different faces and different people present in the building. I'm at home today, but my son Alexander is there teaching Ivrea, so I feel very close to those of you who are in the building today. And I'm delighted that Ivrea is back in the building. So a few community announcements. As Rebecca said in her community email, the LJY summer camps are now all up and running, as it were, ready for you to subscribe to. There is no better way, I really know this from my personal experience, there is no better way for our children to develop a really confident, robust, positive sense of their own Jewish identity while having enormous fun at the same time than to go on an LJY summer camp. And I really, really encourage people to think about sending your children to spend some time with LJY. It really is quite transformative, and I couldn't recommend it. I can't recommend it highly enough. A few announcements for this week. Our usual activities continue as normal. Tuesday is the deadline for nominations to FPS Council and for our honorary officer roles. You can find the nomination form on the email and submit it to Pauline. Our AGM will be on July 15th. So please do, if you're interested in that or thinking about whether you might want to serve on council, all of the council members would be very happy to talk to you. So bear that in mind. Deadline is Tuesday for that. Also on Tuesday at 8 p.m, Liberal Judaism's events for Refugee Week kick off at 8 o'clock with a session on Jewish refugees in Britain. There's going to be a conversation between Dr. B. Lukowitz, who's the director of the AJR Refugee Voices Testimony Archive, and with Bob and Anne Kirk, who are very much members of Liberal Judaism and who are both Kindertransport children themselves. There's also going to be a short film about Rabbi Harry Jacobi, which will be introduced by Rabbi Margaret Jacobi. So I commend that to you on Tuesday. On Thursday at 7:30, Beit Midrash is hosting Keshet UK. Keshet UK is a charity that provides tailored support for Jewish communities and organisations to become more inclusive of LGBTQ+ people and their families. And this is a real opportunity for us to extend our learning and continue our journey as we continue to strive to be as welcoming and inclusive as we can as a community. And so I commend it to you and encourage you to come along. And looking a little bit further ahead, on the 19th of June, we have our Czech scroll service, those scrolls that mean so much to us and have become such a central part of the journey of our B'nai Mitzvah children. And that's it for community announcements today. It only remains for me to say Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom tomorrow. Thanks so much. I would like to just add one thing, which if there are any parents in the service, just a reminder that we have the President's Fund in our congregation explicitly to help families book into LJY Netzer camps and to have a little bit of extra help. So please be in touch with me to learn more about the President's Fund, which is still alive and kicking, and its pure focus was that. So if you are interested, be in touch with me. We end our service with Adon Olam. No.
Ein Kelohim.
Ein Keloheinu. Ein Keloheinu. So Ein Keloheinu, which you can find on page 528 to finish our service. Thank you, Dean. I love it when we're surprised by what's at the end, even when it's what we want and it's traditional. So we go now, just before we go into Kiddush, I'm going to call on Richard to offer us the final blessing. So if you'd like to stand, if you're at home, or stand in the sanctuary before we offer a Kiddush, and then I get to walk you out and be with you. And I echo tomorrow's words. There's something so wonderful about seeing so many of you in person.
May God bless you with all good and keep you from all evil. May God teach your heart the meaning of life and grant you knowledge of the infinite. May God reach out to you with tenderness that you may have enduring peace.
Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
V'shamru v'nei Yisrael et ha-Shabbat, la'asot et ha-Shabbat, l'dorotam berit olam, beini uvein b'nei Yisrael, oti le'olam, ki sheshet yamim asa Adonai, et ha-shamayim ve'et haaretz, uvayom hashvi Shavat vayinafash. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen. Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom, and we really look forward to sharing challah in real time with you all. Shabbat Shalom.